This historic evening, Joe Biden has pulled out of the 2024 US presidential race. This means the contest is going into uncharted territory. He's not going to be seeking a second term. The Democrats will now need to choose another candidate to face off what looked like an unbeatable Donald Trump in November 2024. Simon Marks is LBC's Washington correspondent, and he joins us Simon, unexpected
Rachel.
or not?
Well, unexpected to me. I did not think that this was going to come until after the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had visited Washington this coming Wednesday, when he's going to make a very controversial a speech to a joint session of Congress. And it had been indicated by people close to President Biden that he did not want to have to take this action at all, and that he certainly didn't want to take it this side of the Netanyahu visit. This is an absolutely astonishing moment in American history. A president of the United States using social media to announce that he is not going forward with his re-election campaign. It comes just a matter of a couple of hours after surrogates for the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, indicated that they had reached the end of the road in terms of their patience with Joe Biden, and that they were going to up the ante in the days ahead, further weakening him and insisting through a series of additional lawmakers who started coming out today and calling for Joe Biden to exit the race. They were going to indicate that there was no turning back for Joe Biden. He spent the entire weekend digging in his heels. I mean, his campaign strategists had already announced a whole slew of dates stretching all the way through until the end of this month, where Joe Biden was going to address fundraisers, and we were told was going to be back on the campaign trail this week. Now, in this letter to the American people, he says that over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. He then defends his record, saying America has the strongest economy in the world.
Yes, Simon, just to interrupt, I did read out the whole statement that he posted on X about 20 minutes ago. Oh, so you were saying that he just listed all his campaign dates. What do you think swung it to make him quit in the past 20 minutes?
Well, I think that the pressure has obviously been building ever since that disastrous debate performance 3 weeks ago. And ultimately, when you've got privately as many as 70% of Democrat lawmakers on Capitol Hill indicating that time's up, you eventually have to accept the fact that time's up. There is one gaping aspect to this statement that is missing.
Kamala
and that
Harris.
is an endorsement of Kamala Harris, and indeed any indication of what happens next. Because over the last 72 hours, there's been a war going on between Democratic Party grandees publicly. Nancy Pelosi told California Democrats several days ago that she believes there should be an open contest to select the next nominee. Kamala Harris, as recently as yesterday in Massachusetts, was publicly indicating that she and Joe Biden were shoulder to shoulder. There was no daylight between them at all, and that they were going to continue marching forward together all the way through until November. There are other senior figures in the Democratic Party, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who within the last 24 hours have pushed back at this idea of an open primary and have said, no, if Joe Biden drops out, it's got to be Kamala Harris. We've heard the same from Congressman Jim Clyburn of South Carolina, the man essentially who was the architect of Joe Biden's election victory in 2020, because he saved Joe Biden's bacon during the primary campaign by delivering in South Carolina the votes of African Americans that turned everything around when Joe Biden was originally beleaguered in his efforts to secure the Democratic Party's nomination. So what happens next, we have absolutely no idea. I think there's obviously huge questions now for the vice president. How does she feel about the fact that Joe Biden has not endorsed her, given the absolutely unyielding loyalty that she has shown to him over the last 3 incredibly rocky weeks? Are there other candidates out there that would even challenge her at this point for the nomination? We know that Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, that Governor Gavin Newsom of California have both indicated previously that they don't plan to run under circumstances like these. And that's partly because they've looked at the political climate here. And I think they've concluded that the Democrats have already lost this year's election. So why on earth run now and go down to defeat when you can just keep your powder dry and wait until 2028? But this also sends another terrible message to Democrat supporters all over the country who have watched their party engage in internecine warfare over the last 3 weeks, the likes of which we have never seen in modern American politics. So we now know that Joe Biden is abandoning his re-election quest. We've got absolutely no idea under what circumstances the party is now going to choose its next nominee, when they're going to choose that nominee, and who will be walking out onto that stage in Chicago at the party's convention next month to accept, presumably, the rapturous applause of a united Democrat Party and to wait for the balloon drop from the rafters in the stadium in Chicago. But how on earth, at this point, 15 weeks away from Election Day, a new candidate can come up with the organisation, the money. I mean, I think the money will start flowing again, but funders are going to want to see who the nominee is before they start throwing money at the party.
Yes,
it's going to be chaos.
Absolute chaos. I mean, in his letter to his fellow Americans, Joe Biden, the outgoing president who stepped down in the last half an hour, says he will fulfill his duties as president for the remainder of his term, i.e., his vice president, Kamala Harris, will not step up until presumably the election day.
Yeah, and of course there are commentators out there who say, well, hang on a second, if Joe Biden lacks the capacity to seek re-election for 4 more years, should he not actually be resigning the presidency and handing the keys to the White House over to her? That would obviously put her in the catbird seat as far as taking the nomination is concerned, because I think she would then, we would all automatically assume that she was going to be the candidate. But it does raise questions about how this country is going to be governed all the way through until January the 20th or the 21st, whatever the inauguration date is next January.
It's the 21st, I think.
The 21st of January. How is this country going to be governed until high noon
Simon,
that day
you are
when a
going
new
to be
president
busy.
takes over?
Simon Marks, you are going to be very, very busy. That's the only prediction I can make with any certainty at all. Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent. Well, let's get straight to your calls to Joe Biden's stepping down finally from the presidency and saying that he is not going to seek another term in the White House. And Bridget in Wimbledon, what's your reaction?
Oh, Rachel.
Hi there.
I called in ages ago with some points about age, basically, but that's been completely thrown out by...
Well, I know, events, dear boy, events.
I mean, if I can just mention it briefly, I mean, I don't think it's about age. It's about the fact that Biden looked and sounded frail, where Trump didn't, especially after the shooting, you know, the fist raise and the...
He's gone, though, Bridget. I mean, can I get a reaction from you to that?
On that, definitely, yeah. I mean, it's no surprise. And I'm listening to what Simon Marks was just saying. I mean, he really should step down now and given Kamala Harris a decent run for the next 6 months.
But he has I mean, as we both have noted in his letter to the...
endorse her.
He definitely didn't endorse Kamala Harris. And that was a very glaring omission from his quite short letter. I mean, MPs on the backbenches have resigned with far longer letters to the Prime Minister than Joe Biden's to the American people today.
There was a great... I don't know if did you ever watch West Wing?
I did.
Great series. And there was a phrase in that they used a couple of times, which was Dems in disarray, which I think applies
Dems
very
are
much.
in disarray tonight.
Yeah.
They are in disarray. Because even Simon Marks couldn't work out who was actually, whose fingers were on the nuclear buttons at the moment.
Well, exactly. That's the worry. But Kamala Harris has to be on the ticket. And
you say has to, but why?
Because of the funding.
Well, Biden is sitting on 281 million to the end of June. That was his war chest.
I
Presumably,
thought
a lot of that
both.
could flow to another candidate.
I thought it had to be both of them, or at least one of them. Having listened to LBC over the last few weeks on this, I could be wrong.
No, you could be right. You could be right.
So that actually gives her a fair amount of leverage, I think.
So the ticket upon which those donations were raised was Biden-Harris.
Biden-Harris, yeah. So one of them has to be on the ticket. So she has to be on the ticket, I think. And if that's the case, if they say to her, OK, we will let you be vice president again, but we want to nominate someone for president, she could just walk away because they can't access the money.
Who was it who said that being vice president wasn't worth a pitcher of warm spit?
Yeah, it was
so I'm not sure she'll want to do that for another 4 years.
Yeah, similar word.